Welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is for anyone building or thinking about building an e-commerce brand. I'm joined by Michael Hixson, an e-commerce strategist for nearly 20 years in the industry. And so he's worked with Shopify brands across different stages of growth, helping them improve conversions, fixing revenue leaks, and building more sustainable businesses. If you care about growth, profitability, or building something that lasts, this episode's for you. Let's get into it. All righty. So, Michael, you've been in the e-commerce space for about 20 years now, which is pretty rare, right? And so people in the space typically don't see multiple cycles. How did you originally get into e-commerce?
Well, I was 20 years ago, I wanted to start my own business. And I had, already been in some other businesses, but I wanted to do an online business. So um, I knew the market of child safety and childproofing gear because I ran that business as a service for a year. And I checked the market and I determined that that niche was more service oriented than website oriented. So I knew that if I built a good website, it could do well. And so that's exactly what happened. I built a good website and it just took off and grew exponentially every year.
Nice, man. When did you figure out like, hey, this was really going to work out for me? When did that come across?
I think within a year or so, it just it just kept growing and growing and growing. I had, I started in my garage and I was doing fulfillment and everything and doing all the marketing and all the website stuff. Yeah, I had to outsource. I hired my brother. He did all my fulfillment for me in the middle of the country in Ohio. And I didn't hire a lot of staff, but I used technology a lot. I really leaned on technology to do a lot of work for me. I think back then that was a different thing, but even today, people can use a lot more technology to run their business, especially with AI and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, I see it all the time. And I mean, I personally do it myself for a lot of businesses. So back then, right, since the landscape has changed dramatically, right? What kind of like tools were you leveraging back then that you were really leaning on for technology?
Well, I think I would leverage different marketplaces. So, you have your core website, but you can go into different marketplaces. So I went into Amazon. I went in back then there were a lot of comparison shopping engines, which are let you compare prices among online retailers. So there was a whole bunch of them. It was Shopzilla was one of them, and there's a bunch of other ones. And so the e-commerce platform I was on let me export a feed to all these different engines. And so I also utilized eBay. And so I think I made the website the best it could be. Then I explored different avenues to grow the brand and in all these different marketplaces. So I think, that blueprint is still there. It's just a different marketplace than it used to be. But yeah, I think for a lot of people, the technology is different, but I think strategy can be similar.
Yeah, strategy. I think the one thing that a lot of these businesses, right, they're in like a product or service, right, is that maybe they don't have like their message aligned for who their target audience is to resonate in their mind. Because ultimately, what you want to do is you want to get that movie playing in their head of how that product or a service is going to help them so that they can take the next
Yeah.
steps of action, right? Because if you can't give them that clarity, right, if it just leaves them with more questions, then that's just not a buying state of mind, right? They're just going to click through,
Yeah.
doom scroll, and just move past you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that, with like how do they communicate what they're about? How do they communicate why they're different? And so I try to bring clarity to that when I'm working on a website. I'll gather all the assets and I'll look at what they're really doing, and then I'll try to emphasize what makes them different, what makes them unique, why they stand out, and why people should buy from them. So a lot of shop owners don't think about that. They don't think of like, why should people buy from me? Yeah, I'm presenting everything right here. But I think you have to make it obvious and quickly obvious, because people go on many different websites. And if you're not communicating exactly right away what it is, what you do, then they're on to the next site. So
100%.
those things are very important. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And no, you've been in it for 20 years, right? So you've seen a lot of changes, a lot of updates to things, right? What kind of change? What do you? What's changed the most in e-commerce since you've been in it?
I think we sort of touched on it before, like technology. I think what e-commerce looks like in 3 years from now is going to be vastly different from what it has looked like and what it is now. I think AI is going to take over. And I've sort of been waiting for a platform or somewhere where AI could decide what it's displaying to every single customer that comes to your website. Because with all this data that it has, it can personalize at scale. And so I think Shopify is starting to do that where they're incorporating a lot more AI things. And, you hear this term agentic commerce, and that's terms being used a lot these days. So, and that's just AIs making purchases on their own. They were tasked with getting something and they'll go into the website, find your website, go into the web and make a purchase without a person involved whatsoever. So I think making your website available to these kinds of engines and agents is going to be crucial in the future. And I see that as the biggest change because, you still have to do so many things in e-commerce, but the technology is going to be the biggest driver going.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I talked to a few people, as a coach at Mastermind, and some of them have developed out some products right before they go to like a service-based business, and some of them have built out like bots, right, that did exactly what you just mentioned, right? It's like they talk to
Okay.
them like through a WhatsApp, right, and they give it orders basically. Hey, I need you to do deep research on this. Hey, I need to buy this. I need you to set this up. Maybe I have some
Yeah.
travel plans to go do. Can you set this up for me? And it's basically their personal assistant, right? And it does all these
Yeah,
things and it gathers
exactly.
all the data and it gets their likeness and everything. And so it makes decisions based off of their personality over time because AI at the sense, right, is data, right? The more data
Yeah.
that you give it, right, the more it can act on what you need it to do, right? You just prompts are one thing, right? That's just like the basic surface level. But if you have actual data of like conversations, behaviors, these kind of things,
Yeah.
right, that's where AI really gets implemented and you become an AI first kind of company.
Yeah. And, I did a website recently and I used this platform called Lovable and
Oh
it
yeah.
sort of did a pre-design for me. So I just gave it some prompts. I'm designing a website for this product. I researched a good prompts to use to get it to create like the first version of the website that I could show it and talk to the client with it about it. And then you can refine it. And so that wasn't available where you just design a site with prompts and you're not physically doing it. So that's very cool. I mean, it it's not perfect, but it was a good first step. And so I showed it to the client and they said, we don't like this, we want to do that. But it was a good starting point. So, I think that's going to continue to evolve within Shopify and other places where you just give it some prompts and it's going to design a website for you and you can refine it and go from there. So that's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen another company too on the rise I was trying to talk to for a little bit called Base 44. I'm not sure if you heard about them. They do something similar to Lovable. You could
Oh, okay.
basically create anything you want. You can create an app, a budget software, any kind of software you could think of, right? Basically anything you want, right? As long as you have the
Okay.
imagination for it, right? I would
Yeah.
Google it up, play with it, see if you like it. Maybe it could be of value to you and your clients. But Base 44, right? You could basically create anything you want, right? I was sitting there creating like a budgeting app, right, for myself, and it was just like
Uh,
very detailed, and goes by credits. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting tool. And like you said, I mean, AI came in like around what 2020 was it? And since then, it's like grown up so fast, right? And the
yeah.
chips that come out every single year are only expediting that like by 10 years. And so it ages so much faster than, I mean, you've been auditing probably a lot of your clients, a lot of stores, right? And so when you're looking to help brands improve their performance, like, when you audit a Shopify store, what are the first few things that you like to typically look at to kind of point out?
I kind of look at it holistically. I look at, all their web pages. I look at their email marketing. I look at their Google Analytics, and I filter it all sort of through best practices and conversion rate optimization and stuff like that. So a lot of people don't understand the need for social proof, which means reviews and testimonials and I've set a lot of brands up on collecting reviews and getting reviews and showing them on the right places on the website because they don't think they need to do that or they don't trust reviews or there's always something stopping them. But social proof is important. Also, like automated emailing is very important in commerce. Email drives a lot of revenue and it's one of the cheapest marketing channels out there. You have to get automated email set up for the different scenarios in which people are shopping so that you can recover an abandoned cart, recover a checkout, remind people about your store, announce new things. So I always look for those things when I'm auditing a store. Like, do they have your social proof? Are they doing recovering on emails? I look at other things specifically on the page, on the home
Hmm.
page, sort of what I touched on before. What makes you unique? What makes you different? Is it very apparent what you're doing right away? And then very specific things about the product page, about, conversion back best practices and different components that add to that. Yeah, so usually when I make an audit, it's 5 or 6 pages of, like, everything I found, that could be improved. I'll also look at keywords and SEO and then I sort of give people a roadmap for improvements. Okay, let's do this. It'll cost this much. It'll cost this much. It'll take this long. So, um yeah, it's just sort of a culmination of all my experience and working with people and having my own shop. I've come to know pretty quickly what's lacking in a website because I've worked on so many.
Yeah. Yeah, and so you would say then, like, the constant mistakes that you would see, right? It's just not being clear on who it is that what they do, right? They don't
Yeah,
have an email capture system. They don't have sequences for that, right?
yeah.
And just the optimization of the page itself, right? These kind of things.
Yeah, 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 and social proof, and
Social proof.
yeah, it's I think it can be overwhelming for somebody to start a new business because there's all these little components, and they don't always know website design, and they'll try to tackle it themselves because they're trying to save money. But it's better to have a professional who knows what they're doing help you out. Even if it costs you something, it's going to make you money later because your site's going to perform better.
Yeah, 100%. I've started many businesses and I always try to do it myself, right? And it just takes so much longer doing it that way. Until I talk to someone that's been there, done that, you can leverage their
Yeah,
experience, right? And get some help. So I think time is going to be the biggest factor and then saving yourself stress, headache, and it's a mental grind,
yeah,
right? It's being an entrepreneur. It's a mindset shift of getting out of your comfort zone, right? Which is doing everything
it
yourself.
is. It is totally. And the thing with e-commerce that I always think about is that there's so many pieces of it that you have to get right for you to be successful. Gotta have a great website and great products. All right. You have to have a good fulfillment system. It can't take too long. There can't be hiccups in people receiving their goods because, you don't want that. You want to keep them happy. Customer service. If people call you with a problem, you have to deal with them. You have to help them out. And so, so there's all these pieces that come together besides just the website, just fulfillment can be very complicated. How you're shipping across the country, if you're doing it yourself, all this software and systems you need. If you're hiring out to somebody to do that, you have to figure out the cost for that. And then, yeah, somebody has to be there to answer the phone, answer the emails, and it's not an easy. And you have to stay in tune with the products, new products that are coming out, new products you can add to your store, margins.
Evolution.
It's hard to stay profitable because there's such pressure on prices and some people just compete on price. So
Yeah.
so it's not an easy thing to put that together and then to have a solid foundation and all those different aspects of it. But that's what you have to do to succeed.
Yeah, I like that topic. And so like when brands get started, like the first couple of years, right? They maybe find like their initial success, like you did, right? It was like after the first
Yeah.
year, you was able to get things going, right?
Hmm.
What what is it that they do when like they hit the growth ceiling after, let's say, a year or two? Like what do they need to do at that point to kind of evolve and continue the business going strong?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I experienced, and I think a lot of people experience is there's so many things to worry about, and you don't always think about like, okay, profit. What are the actual numbers? What are the profit that I'm making on this? And I think you can get lost behind all these different metrics like clicks to your website, revenue, all these different things like that 'cause there's all that data there from people that go to your website, but you really have to have a good handle on your expenses and your bottom line profit and track your profitable products and eliminate non-profitable products, and 'cause you really wanna have a stable long-term business. You don't wanna have something that's not gonna make you money long term. So for me, it was hard for me to get a handle on that because I'm doing so much and I'm handling all these different pieces and I'm not an accountant. I don't have the tools to do to properly do that. And
I'm
I
with
had
you
a
on
guy
that.
that did my taxes, but I don't have a CFO. I'm a small business. I don't have a CFO, so I think a lot of people are in that boat. They don't have anybody analyzing their finances and, you can chase revenue and sales and all this stuff, but if you don't have good margins, if you're not making profit, it's all for nothing. You're not going to survive. So I think that's one thing that small businesses struggle with.
What do you feel like they need to do to like kind of break through that?
I think just get a good advisor. And I think kind of change your mindset in a way too. Like, okay, you have to go from like, okay, I got this business up and it's launched. And now I really need to understand, all the numbers and what the numbers mean. So I think there's a lot of good people out there that I've seen, online in different places that talk about this. And so I think it's just good advice, find a good advisor and kind of shift your thinking to where you're like, okay, I'm going to track these profitability metrics more so than visits to my website and all these other vanity metrics. I want to track profitability. So I think you just need to get good advice.
I like that. Yeah, definitely. You don't want to do everything yourself, right? Because you mentioned that you've been a solopreneur, right? You've been doing that for a long time. And so if you
Yeah.
delegate these things out, right? Let's say for the average solopreneur, they hire their accountant, they get a coach, whatever that might be, right? What should they be focused on, right, as a solopreneur? He's got someone that handles his finances, right? And he's operating a business by himself, right? What should they be focusing on, right, to continue their growth, right? Is it their mindset? Is it a specific maybe skill set? Like, what should their daily focus should be on?
Yeah, I think one of the factors that can really help people is having a good mentor. I remember, feeling alone a lot when in my own business because I'm making all these important decisions and I don't have anybody to talk it over with or bounce it off of. And so I think it's good to have a mentor or a coach because that can help you stay focused and on track. And I tried to set that up for myself and it just never happened, but I wish I would have done that because I had access. I was in this small town in Northern California, but I had access to all these different businessmen that were in business long term in my small community. And I could have leveraged their knowledge. And I wish I would have done that because, and then that makes you feel less alone and more grounded to what you're doing because you're not in an echo chamber, you're getting feedback. So a mentor, I think, is a very important piece if you're solo because you can often feel alone.
Yeah, yeah, I would definitely have to agree. If you're solo, right? I mean, you can get stuck in your head, and my mentor Dean and Tony, right? They say this quite often. When you're in your head, you're dead, right? You'll talk yourself out of it. When you get into a
Yeah,
negotiating battle with yourself, it's a very dangerous place to be, right? You don't want to do that
yeah,
because you'll lose.
yeah.
So I'm with you on that. Okay. Well, what's something in e-commerce that you think is pretty overrated right now?
I would say based on some feedback I've got some from clients recently is influencer. And, I think influencers have been prevalent for a while, but I think finding a good influencer from your brand for your brand that's going to uh, give you good PR and good traffic and not be a waste of your money, it can be difficult. I've talked to many brands recently and gone down that road of trying to find good influencers to help them out, and they didn't find them. And so to me, that seems like it's kind of overrated. I don't know if I think if you find the right one that can give you, good PR and good traffic and it's not too expensive, great. But I think it's harder to find these kinds of people if you're not spending a lot of money. So to me, I think that seems overrated. If you don't have budget and you don't have, the time to spend on it. So I've just had several clients tell me recently that it didn't work for them. So that's why I'm saying that.
What was like their strategy if you know, like what did they use to kind of get an influencer on board to try to get more views that way?
Oh, I don't know specifically which like platform or how they did their outreach. I know Shopify has different apps and platforms where you can reach out to influencers. I did that some in my own business way back. I would try to find
Yeah.
prominent uh, influencers. It was a lot more manual back then. You had to do a
Yeah.
lot of research. And so, you create this spreadsheet and you try to track their traffic. You would use these different tools to try to track their traffic and, followers and all that kind of stuff. And it's easier now, but
Okay. Did that help you out a lot whenever back then when you were able to find people that aligned with like your vision?
it helped me some, I think. And yeah, I think there's different tactics like, either pay these people upfront or you send them a free product and they try it out and stuff like that. So I think it's not always clear the best avenue to pursue people with in that, whether you give them product or pay them or how much do you pay them. I think it's kind of a gray area and and entrepreneurs have to try to figure that out. That's why I think it's kind of a murky thing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one thing I did want to ask you too is for like the fellow solopreneur, right, or the entrepreneur that they want to build out a brand, right, in e-commerce, and maybe they want to plan for an eventual exit. And I believe you told me you did that yourself, right? Tell me about
Mhm.
your experience, the brand that you grew up, like where you were able to scale it to, and then how you was able to exit out and why you were able to do that.
Yeah, I think you just have to build something valuable for people. You have to have a certain audience. You have to have, grow your sales over time. You have to have, um, like I said, there's so many different things you have to do. You have to have good content. You should blog. You have to do all the social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all the different ones. And so for me, I think, it was just growing my revenue year over year, and having good content. I would blog, I would post on social media and stuff like that. So I think when people are looking to buy something, they just want to see, okay, is this a complete thing that I can just plug in and take over, or does it need work? I think, and it could vary for different people, but I think if you want to exit, you have to have a exit strategy and think about that. I didn't really have an exit strategy. I just thought, okay, this is going great. I'm gonna keep doing this for a very long time. And then when things start to slow down, you're like, okay, there's different market pressures now, different people different competitors and stuff like that. So I think I could have prepared myself better by having an exit strategy, but I didn't really. I just kind of came to it late. So just, educate yourself about that, what an exit strategy looks like and what you have to do to prepare for that. Cause I wasn't really prepared until it was sort of late in the game. But yeah, just get up to speed in what you need to do about.
Yeah, I think being an entrepreneur, I think a lot of it is just planning for the future, right? Events,
Yeah.
eventualities, these kind of things, right? And then creating a system and structure for it so that you can execute.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. I mean, with the brand that you had created, where were you able to scale that as far as like yearly revenue?
Okay. So the first year we were 80,000 in revenue. That's me in my garage.
Nice.
And then the next year it was or something like that. And then 720,000 the year after that, and then 1.1 million the next year. So I started this business 20 years ago in 2006. So I went from my garage to over a million a year within 4 years. And then I got ranked in the internet retailer like second 500, which means the top 1,000 online retailers. Just
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Just I don't have a team. It's just me leveraging technology and doing what I can to grow my business. And I had a very small staff. And then I was at this trade show and I was telling my story to the editor of Internet Retailer Magazine,
Mm,
who happened to sit next to me at lunch. And he was just amazed at my story because a lot of the other people and their rankings have a big team, you know. So that was kind of cool to amaze him about that. And then, so it sort of peaked and went even for a while and then started to go down. But yeah, it was just a great experience, and I learned so much. I didn't know anything going in, so I just kept learning. That's the other important. Just learn, 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 learn. I made time for doing online research and reading things, and you have to do that. I think that's so important, and it's easier now. But like so that's sort of my story. But I learned so much. I did all the advertising. Starting, I did all the Google ads and Facebook ads. I did all the different marketplaces, so it just gave me such a great foundation to be able to help other brands because, I've been there. I had in-house fulfillment, then I outsourced fulfillment. So that's what I try to tell people when they want to hire me as a developer. It's like, okay, I'm not just a developer. I also have all this other experience of running my own business. So I understand exactly what you're going through right now because I've been there. So,
yep.
so I think that's what makes me a little bit different. I have more experience than most developers or specialists that just specialize in one thing because I've done so many different things. Yeah.
Yeah, you grinded it out for like 4 years straight to get it over to that seven-figure mark, right? So that
Yeah.
takes a little bit of a warrior spirit, right? And I like that about you. So tell me a little bit more about the psychology and the mindset it took, and maybe even some of the sacrifices that you had to go through during this period of you were grinding it up and getting to that point.
Yeah. I think part of it is my personality. I can be very focused. And even I can even be too focused sometimes when my family is like trying to talk to me or something and I'm in my head and I'm thinking about something. And so I think I had to watch out for that. Yeah, so you can become obsessed with your business. And I think you have to keep in mind the goal of like, this is really about your life and the lifestyle that you want to have. And you can't spend like 15 hours a day obsessing about it. You'll just burn out and you won't have good perspective on like, why am I really doing this? So I think when you go along the journey and celebrate when I reached 1 million a year, it's like, okay, let's just keep going. Let's keep going. And then, but it is a journey and stop and celebrate. So I think you have to keep perspective. And that's like where a mentor or coach could come in and just to give you some perspective on what you just achieved and what you can achieve. So it's not always just a grind, enjoy the journey. Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that with me, man. That's super cool, man. I love seeing the passion and ambition that people have, and you were still pushing through it. Like, okay, this is cool. You had some perspective. Maybe you enjoyed it for a little bit, but then you were right back to your grind, right? Because you made that such a habit, and habits are hard to
Yeah.
break, right? And those were successful habits that got you to that
Yeah,
point.
yeah,
Hell
and,
yeah.
yeah, I always kept a view to the future. It's like
Future facing.
I had a big to-do list, and whenever I had time, I would work on it. Different strategies, different tactics, things that I wanted to explore, and so, yeah, it's because your business is never static. There's always things that you can do with it, and yeah, you have to think about the
Awesome, man.
future.
Hell yeah. I had a couple questions here that I wanted to use to kind of maybe create like some like shorts, maybe try to see if we can go viral with one of these, right? And really hit home for so like our fellow entrepreneurs and solopreneurs that are just going at it. So I think one of the questions I had here is, so where are brands leaving like the most amount of money that you're typically seeing?
I think a lot of brands can spend a lot of money on advertising and not get good returns. If you're doing it yourself, it can be very tricky. There's so many different settings and tactics and stuff like that. So I think you don't want to waste all this advertising spend and not get any return on it. So I think you really have to have a good person that's doing your ads and your marketing because back when I did it, it was much simpler. Google and these other places were much simpler. They weren't as complex. And so you have to have a good ads person. And another thing to watch out for is to chase the new bright and shiny trends.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you might see like a new platform or a new tactic or something, and people are trying it and really going after it. And you can't always chase these things. You have to determine if it's right for your business, if it's worth your time. But there's always new technology coming out. And so you really have to determine, is it worth the effort to chase this thing? Is it really going to give you the kind of returns that you want? It's just a temptation to keep trying the newest and shiniest thing that you keep hearing about, and it might not be the best thing. So it's
Yeah.
just a temptation.
Takes up energy, takes up resources to figure out if it's actually going to work for their scenario, right? And I
Yeah.
see the similar thing, what you mentioned there too, is like they are focused heavy just on traffic, right? But I don't think
Mm.
the clients that I've worked with, they don't focus too much on the psychology of the buying moment, right? So giving them the clarity that they need throughout the whole process. So it's not just the ads, right? That's the first initial, like, hey, let me stop, let me take a look, let me read through the description, let me watch this
Mhm.
video, let me take a look at this, ad creative, right? And then once they click that, the next page, the landing page, right, they need to keep that same message. It needs to align, right? And then when they make their
Yeah.
purchase, right, like you mentioned earlier, the emails need to go along with that, right? They want to have that tracking information. They want to know that everything is smooth and they just got that constant contact, that everything is a seamless flow. And I don't think that they put too much focus on that side of the buyer psychology of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It has to be a consistent experience, and you have to pay attention to the different touch points. And, uh, and it has to resonate with your brand. So I think that's just going to reassure your buyers. And if they have a good experience, they'll come back, they'll tell their friends. And that's what you want. You want, people to refer you out and you want return customers. And so, yeah, it's you really have to pay attention to all the little pieces, like I said, because you want to consistently deliver on all that stuff. It's just much better for your brand long term.
Yeah. What would you say then is like when they're just getting started, what are the biggest mistakes are they making? Like for these new Shopify owners?
I think one of the things that I see from different clients is they don't like fully understand like the market, like in the competition. And they think if they just throw up a website and they start drop shipping some products they can get from a supplier, that it's going to be successful. And so I think that or they might go into like a really crowded niche where there's a lot of competition and it's hard to be seen and noticed just because there's so much competition. I think, back when I got started, it wasn't so much competition. The internet was fairly new. So, but it's much more competitive now. So you have
Right.
to really find a good, unique niche that has good margins and can allow you to be profitable and allows you to stand out. I think people don't really always do that kind of research where they're looking at, potential competitors even before they start anything. And so I think, yeah, you really have to do niche research to determine, okay, is this niche really viable or not? If not, you're just going to be spinning your wheels. And
Yeah.
I'm guilty of this myself. Like 10 years ago or something, after I, you know, stopped working for other people and started consulting. I also started a drop shipping business. And the niche I chose was just ultra competitive. And it was just difficult with all these different people, even the manufacturers that what I was getting product from was starting to sell directly to the consumer. So not only was I competing with other retailers, I was competing with the people that were supplying me.
Yeah.
So it was just I had to stop. I had to walk away because it's like, okay, I spent time. building up the website, setting up relationships with suppliers and all this stuff, but it wasn't going to be profitable because, ad spend would have been too great. And then it just wasn't worth my time. So you really have to research the competition and take your time. Don't just launch into a niche because you heard it'll be good or you heard this or you heard that. You need to verify very specifically how many sites there are and what kind of traffic they're getting. And so I think very few people go to that extent to determine what their niche is. And it's important.
Yeah, I would agree. Some people I've coached in the past, right? And this isn't not in e-commerce, but more specifically like the knowledge industry, right? They
Huh?
they have a lot of ambition when they want to help people. And that's a good thing, right? But they want to help everyone with that. And when you help everyone with something, you help nobody with that, right? Because you don't stand for anything. So you
Yeah.
have to narrow that down to a specific target audience because it's just like you mentioned, right? You got to do some deep market research to understand exactly who it is that we're helping because there's a psychology
Yeah.
that goes behind it, right? So if you
Yeah.
understand a little bit more about like the age range, because you're not going to talk to a 50-year-old the same way you're going to talk to an 18-year-old. That's two different
Yeah.
conversations, right? And so you got to understand a little bit more about the pain points, what are maybe some goals and aspirations that they may have, right? These kind of things
Yeah.
and how you fit yourself into that equation, right? And that's what's going to help them move the needle the most, right? Just getting started, right? Is identifying who they're going to serve and how they're going to properly serve them, right? So
Yeah, I there's a term, and it's called ICP, Ideal Client Profile. And I think it's really important that you do this kind of research into the clients you're serving. AI makes this very easy these days. There's GPTs where you can just type in certain parameters of your audience, and it'll tell you all these different things about your audience, and then you can fine tune it. And then so oftentimes that's a starting point for, how you're going to be serving these clients and what's going to resonate with them. And, I think back when I started 20 years ago, this was hard research. There wasn't an AI to help me like lay out my ideal client. I just had some vague notions of it. But I think that kind of stuff is very helpful to entrepreneurs to know these are my clients and this is the messaging that's going to work with them. And okay, let's start building this out. Yeah, these kind of things are very helpful for your focus and what you're going after.
yeah, because it gives yourself clarity, not just the client, right? So
Yeah,
let's say they get that down, right? And now they got an e-commerce business. They're doing, let's say 20K a month, right? What should their focus be from there if they're looking to grow and continue to scale?
I think getting repeat business is important. You don't have to find a new client. You already have that customer. So I think learning how to remarket to people, how to keep serving that customer because it's expensive to find new customers, new clients. You have to have ad spend, you have to have hours spent. So if you can keep getting that customer as a repeat customer, I think that's important so that uh, you don't have to keep finding new customers. In the business that I was in, I was serving parents that had toddlers. I was selling baby safety, baby proofing stuff. So that's a narrow window when they have a child that's, between 1.5 and 3 or, and then they move on, their child gets older. So I constantly had to new customers. So it's if you can just keep serving your current customers, that's a good focus. And then exploring different marketplaces where, you could go into and expand your customer base. You have your website, but you could check out different channels like Amazon and different things like that to grow your audience. So,
100%. Yeah, and I would have to agree with you 100% because your best buyers are always going to be your repeat buyers, right? So as you like you mentioned earlier, as you grow and you evolve, right? Maybe you come in with new products, maybe you change some things around, right? First people you want to
yeah,
offer that to, people that bought from you in the past, right? Because they trust you already, right? And so you can test the
yeah,
data with them before you bring it to the larger audience, right? And
yeah.
so that yeah, it's a great way to kind of keep things going because they're the best buyers. So 100%, I would definitely say focus on, remarketing campaigns are going to be totally key and segmenting lists for that specific. All righty. So Michael, what's next for Michael? What can we expect him to accomplish next?
Well, I just want to, keep serving my clients. I like helping people and I like coaching people. Um, and building websites and making websites better. So I'm just going to continue doing that. And I don't have any lofty aspirations about growing my business to a certain number. I just want to continue being useful and helpful to people. And so, you know, that may take different forms. I'm thinking about coaching more, or developing some courses which I can sell and stuff like that, because I do have a wide knowledge base. So, yeah, just being useful and helpful.
Hell yeah. Hey, and for the listeners, right, the people that are watching this on YouTube, maybe you're listening on Spotify, right? Where can people find you if they want to work with Michael?
Okay. So my website is Ecomm Growth Strategies, ECOMM growthstrategies.com. And yeah, I'm also on LinkedIn, have a Facebook page. But I'm on different platforms where I get clients like Upwork and Shop Experts. So that's where you can find me. Or you can just email me, Michael at Ecom Growth Strategies. Let me know what you need help on, and we can talk and I can get you help.
Hell yeah. Awesome, man. So I'm gonna leave you with one final question here, just out of my curiosity, man. So if you had to start all over again from ground zero, $0, zero name to you, like to your brand, where would you go? What would you do first? What would be the first thing you do?
I think what I touched on before, if was still going to do an e-commerce brand, then you have to start finding that niche. It's all based on that. And I would just take more time and be a little more thorough about it. And and then just discovering how to go into that niche and what works in that niche. It's like I said, it can be a long process to get all the pieces in place, but it can be exciting too. And to grow something and to build something is very rewarding. Yeah, just and explore all the AI tools because, that is a game changer and it's just going to continue to be a game changer. So explore what you can accomplish within the tools that we have and the tools that are going to be coming because like I said, I think e-commerce is going to be vastly different and I think my job is going to be vastly different and I have to keep educating myself to keep up with stuff. So, yeah, use the tools and explore what can be done.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Michael, I want to thank you for coming on to the Signal Stack podcast, man, talking with me, sharing your insight and expertise, man. And so everyone listening, if you want a chance to work with Michael to get yourself fixed up on your Shopify store, I'll have his link and all his information, his contact details in the description below of YouTube. And then if you're on Spotify, we'll figure that out for you. So, hey, till next time, Michael, we'll have to do this again, man, after we reach new heights, and we'll catch up at that point. That sound good?
It's been a pleasure, Richard. Thank you.
All righty, brother.